Well, hey Don,
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm wonderful. So lovely to be here today.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for being here. So, welcome to AIGA Real Talk, where we'll dive into the conversations that move our industry forward. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dawn Davidson from the AIGA board. Who's here and where are you joining us from? Please put your information in the chat and introduce yourself. This series was created because we believe the most powerful conversations happen when we're honest about our challenges and opportunities. So today we'll do some real talk about inspiration or theft, the ethical boundaries in the creative process. For the next 30 minutes, we'll discuss this evolving landscape. We have with us my co host, David G. Stone from AIGA Chicago, to help us wrestle with some of the blurry lines between inspiration and appropriation, and a bit about how AI has transformed the creative landscape. So, drop your questions and your comments in the chat because this is your conversation too. So, let's check out the chat. So, is it Lisa from Portland? I see Luann from Rochester. Danielle from Dallas, thanks for joining. Scott from Chicago, fantastic. Atlanta, NYC, Missouri. Thanks, you guys, for showing up. This is going to be great. Okay, so David, let's jump in and just start with inspiration versus appropriation. So that's an old age creative debate. Where is the line between being inspired and stealing? And have the goalpost moved in the digital era? Or has the line always been blurred?
That's a really great question, and I think many of us have heard the very famous saying that uh, much of art is just stolen reproduction from other people. We all find inspiration, and we learn through tracing, through copying.
Yeah.
That's how we
Mhm.
learn to do our work. Yet there is definitely a line between inspiration and copying. There are
Yeah. Yeah.
reproductions, even, which are unique to our own selves. And up until the digital age, really up until 2022, we could even say, if not even maybe 2023, there was a very clear line. It was plagiarism was a clear thing. It was
Mhm. Mhm.
if you do
Mhm.
something by your own hand, if you take something into Photoshop, even if you mess around with it, if you create your own piece of art, if you modify it, if you turn it into your own, if you create something that is distinctly yours, that was created by an artist. It was very true.
Yeah.
Whether that's sketching by hand, whether it's putting a collage together, um, you know, there's never really been a point where we've had to question much of, is that original work, is that inspired by or appropriated work or stolen work, up until the past few years. And as you mentioned AI before, that's really brought things into at best we could say, a gray area, where we don't know what is creating the foundation of that work or not.
Right.
And
Right.
as a result of that, it's created a whole new landscape for us where we have to now question when we're looking at work. It's AI, deep fakes, all type of
Mhm.
product that recreate real things or recreate things that we might have otherwise created ourselves, are now making us question, even with work that was not created by AI, are making
Right.
us question, was this created by AI? Was it not? Was this created by an artist, or was it stolen from somebody else? So I think it's a very interesting question, where that line is nowadays. And I would like to think that inspiration is a wonderful thing, and
Mhm.
inspiration with attribution is an even better thing. But I would still like to think that the line, even today, even with the tools that we have as we continue to grow, is around the thought process, the artist, um, the beyond the intentionality, the tools we use, and how we make that a final product. That we may draw on inspiration, we may put together mood boards. As a creative director,
Right.
I sometimes feel that 90% of my job is pulling art and sharing it with my team and saying, hey, here's kind of the inspiration we want to go with here, and then using that to create new things. But I think at the end of the day, it is a matter of the actual hands-on work being done by
Right.
people. And whether you're looking at a screen and sort of doing multiple iterations to do your thing and being inspired by that design and then iterating enough to take that differently by hand,
Mhm.
or if you're taking something into Photoshop and then throwing 1,000 filters over it and completely changing it to something new, there is that element of it needs to be different than where it started. And
Yeah, yeah. I think you bring up a
I'm having
great
trouble
point.
finding that, but where are you on that, Dawn? Because I'm always curious where other people are.
Yeah, I mean, right there with you. I think you brought up excellent points. I think for me, the intent matters. I think in every industry, you have to have um, uh, some room for integrity, and if someone is intentionally doing that, uh, regardless of the reason, I think that's where, we had several years, probably decades, heavy emphasis on plagiarism and what constitutes as plagiarism and what constitutes as being influenced by or inspired by. So I am absolutely right there with you, and I think as as creatives, as artists, as leaders, we have to understand what our intent is, and being tuned enough with our teams to understand what intent is as well, and help to alleviate some of what's going on. But I do believe that the goalpost is shifting in what is appropriate, how far we can take it, and a lot of creative can be created and stolen without consequence. And I think that's the thing that's hurting people, um, and kind of making the lines a little bit more blurry and agitating. Um, so let's continue to talk about influences. So, what does it look like to be open about your influences, but still protect your originality? You brought up a great point about being a creative director and mood boards and saying, here's the direction I'm feeling with this. But is there a way that or should we be crediting that inspiration without watering down um, our voice?
So that's another very interesting question, because in commercial work in particular, where I'm assuming many of our membership here and many of our audience are a part of, we don't have the opportunity um, to provide credit for inspiration or for much of the work that
Mhm.
goes on in the final product. When you put out an ad, the ad buy doesn't have a space saying, hey, list this up here in the corner. We
Mhm.
don't have that opportunity with banner ads, with billboards, with anything that we design. So it's on us on the back end to very actively um, promote where we get our sources from. And I think nowadays we do have that opportunity, in that so many of us are interested in how we develop different work and what the story behind the work is, that the more that we share our work, the more that we share our thought process behind it. If we're sharing it on our own Instagrams, if our studio is sharing it, those are opportunities to actively really share that work. I think
Yeah.
there's two levels though, and I'm going to break your question in two, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You asked about both the attribution for the inspiration, but then also the ownership of the work, I think, and the protection of the work, I believe I
Right.
heard you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the attribution, I think for attribution and for originality, I think we need to, now more than ever, really actively attempt to create original work. And I, I'm using that word active in the sense of consciously going in and saying, am I creating this in a way that it is going to be unique and original enough to
Mhm.
be considered my own unique work? While it's influenced by any number of different works, while it comes off the mood board, am I driving the team to create something that hasn't been done before? As a designer, am I doing something that takes this initial creative direction in to a new space? Am I putting my own talent into this? One thing that I look for as a creative director is not to continue doing exactly what's on the mood board, but I ask people,
Right.
take a risk in the first round that we do things. Take a risk with what you do. Take me somewhere new. My guidance is to set the tone, but the reason that we hire an artist is for their skills. So that first step is to really actively and consciously try to create something that is different than the inspiration, but follows in the footsteps of the inspiration where we
Right.
started and honors the spirit of that. Protection of our work is a much trickier thing nowadays. And I think a lot of it is very similar to trying to vocalize the attribution and augment that. It's vocalizing and sharing each other's work. It's creating a network where we can augment what we see from other people, where we can tag people in things on social
Right.
media, where we can make known who did what. And that's really, in the current world, that's really the best that we can hope for at the moment with the power that we all have. There are some tech movements to put together images that are protected from the very beginning, where you can get a chain of ownership through it. That's more on the tech side of things, and we as designers don't necessarily control that. But with what we do control, I think we just need to try as much as possible to put our work out there, not be afraid to put our work out there, and continue to say, this is my work, claim ownership for your work, and continue to produce more and more work that represents who you want to be as an artist.
Yeah. And there's some strong feelings around this in the industry, right? We hear it is inspiration. It helps to make our jobs easier, but then it's also stealing my work and it's not being original. A lot of legality too that I think we're coming into. So we have some comments in the chat saying, AI is not original. It's not. It basically is stealing. And so how do we balance this? Let's use AI as a starter and then connecting that more human um, expertise, the perfection that we can make it. Uh, how do we balance that? How do we use it as just a starter?
So that's a really great question. I personally, I have been working with AI since the very outset of Midjourney and Dolly. For a little bit of context
Hmm.
on where I sit, and here in Chicago, I'm currently running a series around AI for our Chicago community. So I do have a little bit of deeper knowledge for the audience on a lot of these things. And where I have found that AI is most helpful at the moment is in those beginning stages. If you want to use AI, which there is absolutely no reason to feel like you need to use AI, by the way. We're talking about this right
Right.
now because AI is something important to be knowledgeable about, but it's not something that you should feel the pressure to use. So in that sense, the first step is, if you are concerned about appropriating other people's work or appropriated work being influencing your work in any way, then don't use AI. That's sort of the first thing you can do, is just say, I'm not going to use AI. Continue doing the things we've all done all along. Go to
Hmm.
magazines, go to museums, go to other people's Instagrams,
Hmm.
go over to Kara app and work with completely anti-AI art. There are resources to find art that is not AI, and that will always be there. I still go to museums and galleries and find all of my inspiration in those places. The the next step is, if you want to use AI, if you insist on using AI, if you want to explore what's happening there and be knowledgeable about it and test that, consider using it in the concept phase. Personally, I use AI as a way to communicate better what's in my mind with the team that
Hmm.
I'm working with. I do not use it in final products right now for clients for a vast many reasons, the
Okay.
legality and the ethics of it both being questions. But you can use AI to start to get a sense of where you'd like to go. It's
Yes.
similar to creating a mood board. And the way I would look at it is, if you want to use it, that is the best level, is to use AI in a mood board sense of creating those initial reference images, and then use that to communicate with your team, and then start exploring things by hand, explore things in Illustrator, and look at it, but don't copy it, is the way that I would
Right.
recommend
Right.
doing it, to use it as a guidance tool, but not to use it as the end all be all.
So Ashley has a great question in here, and then we'll move on. How should we go about convincing clients that this is intentional, original, human created art is worth their money instead of what they can get for relatively cheap or even free via AI?
That is a very good question. And it's, this follows the eternal questions of how can we convince clients that we provide value and that our prices are worth it in the first place. So the first thing would just be convince clients that they just need to continue giving us budgets and hire us in general. But when it comes to AI, the first thing I do with clients is explain the liabilities of AI. AI is currently unsettled law. And there are, without getting too deep into the weeds on this right now because of our time, there are a lot of open questions around the legalities of AI, which is different than the ethics of AI.
Right.
And I would separate that. The ethics are, was this right to do or not? The legality is really what is the letter of the law and what can be protected by the law. And I think we all agree that the ethics of AI are horrible. Most of these platforms were not trained in a ethical way to begin with. They scraped and stole a lot of work. The legality is very different and very murky. Right now, we do not know, especially for clients, are clients liable if we don't know whether or not AI programs are legally infringing on copyright with how they trained things. This is a legal question that, regardless of what you feel about the ethics, is still under debate in the courts. And this will probably take a year or 2 years to figure all of this out. OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, which is one of the worst offenders at the moment. Many of you may have seen the Studio Ghibli clear infringement of Studio Ghibli's work recently. OpenAI has a philosophy that any content that is available anywhere on the internet is fair use for them to train off of. And that is a legal argument that they use. I'm not going to share my personal opinion, but that is an open question on a legal issue. So if the courts come down and say, well, that's wrong, then the next question becomes, are clients who use AI, are artists who use AI liable then for using AI produced work as using copyright infringing work in their ads? Is that something that a client could be liable for? And we don't know right now. And so that's the first level to which I would say you can convince your clients is there's just a lot of liability here. The second thing is that look at the Studio Ghiblification, as they're calling it now, of what OpenAI did. Look at the little action figures that are going around. You're getting AI trends and AI memes that are so similar that there's no uniqueness in what AI is putting out in that sense. So the next step would be saying, if you want to do something quick in AI, it is to ask an AI for something very quick, you're getting something that's just regurgitated stuff. You're not actually getting something that is unique and ownable as your brand. Regardless of what the legality is, on a brand level, it's not supporting your brand identity the same way that artist created work is. There's no artist thought behind it. There's no strategy thought behind it, which is the stuff that makes brand work resonate with audiences. So that's the next level I would get to. There are ways that you could incorporate it if you want to. But at the end of the day, the value of bringing on an artist is where it's always been. It's your thought process, your strategy. It's the design thought process that brings the purpose of it brings the purpose of the asset that you're creating to the user and creates an asset that is purposely intended to drive certain reactions from the audience, whether that is to drive a user journey with certain UX and UI, whether that is to just deliver somebody information, to elicit an emotion. As a designer, you have much more control and much more strategic precision over work that you create rather than the AI work. And the third level I would say is it's not that much cheaper. The clients can do the user generated content thing and treat AI as a one and done, enter a prompt, get whatever they want and put it out there. But that is not really going to be the stuff that takes work away from all of us, because that's work that the client wouldn't come to us for that type of work anyway. That's low quality, low bar work.
Right.
It's the other work where you have to actually think about it. You have to go through so many iterations, so many generations, so many
Mm-hmm.
edits afterwards, that there needs to be a full-time designer on an AI project, regardless of whether it starts with AI or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love AI. I use it a lot. And I love the idea of being able to use it to help sell ideas, um, to help uh, get it in the client's mind of how this could possibly work out in how we could elevate an idea, and use it as a starter. And I think it's also really important that, um, again, we think about the intent behind it and why we're using it and um, what we're trying to pass it off as. But I definitely think that it's a way for us to, in a very quick way, say, no, 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 this is what I was talking about, and here are the 5 different things that we're thinking about using it for. So um, I see it as a great benefit when resources are tight, whether that's time or actually money too. So um, that's really been great. I wanna shift a tiny bit from collaboration to competition. So in an industry that often rewards the lone genius or the first to market idea, sorry, how do we shift toward collaboration instead of competition that might, feed into compromising our ethics?
Yeah, I think that collaboration is the key to protecting our ethics
Mhm.
and maintaining our future. I think the first thing is everything that we're doing here to be a part of an organization like AIGA
Mhm.
and to gather together and to discuss art, to share our art together, to share our work together, and to seek opportunity to elevate each other, to elevate voices that might otherwise not be able to be elevated, and to continue to just promote and encourage each other to keep doing work that resonates with us, work that we care about, and
Yeah.
work that we want. As individuals, we don't have the loudest voice to do these things. As an organization, as a community of designers, we have a much louder voice and a much larger presence, and we can convince clients, we can hopefully convince the tech companies of where this needs to go and how this needs to be to grow, and what we need in order to keep delivering the great work that we've always been doing.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder if it's possible that we just need to start reframing the value of collaboration. That it is the more brains at the table, the better something is. The more diverse views, uh, and not just physically how someone looks, but their background, their experiences. That that um, that essentially creates bigger and better and more effective work, instead of being in this really tight competition with one another.
Well, as we were talking about before, it's all about driving to a place of uniqueness and
Yeah.
creating. If we really step back and think about it from the client perspective for a moment and think about it in what are we designing for, we're trying to design things that help clients to stand out in a very crowded marketplace already.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's really one of the definitions of the word diversity, is things that
Hmm.
you put them next to each other and they don't look exactly the same. They don't
Hmm.
act exactly the same. We want our clients to be able to put out a logo, put out any marketing asset, and to say, this is my client's thing. This is a
Yeah.
Nike thing. This is an Adidas thing. They're two similar brands, but completely separate designs. And the
Right.
way that we get there is by bringing in different voices, people with different backgrounds, people with different environments. So one example that I love to give is I work with a lot of people all over the world and a lot of artists that are very international. And on one of the projects that I was doing recently, we were designing some style frames and some concept frames, and we were designing trees. And as we go through here, everybody came in with a different tree. And I had an artist in Sao Paulo. I had another artist in in Poland, and I'm here in Chicago, and we've all got different ideas of what does a tree look like, because literally the trees that we're walking down and seeing on the street are completely different. In Poland, we've got more pines, we've got more
Hmm.
old European trees. In Sao Paulo, you've got more tropical trees, you've got palm trees, you've got all sorts of jungle vines. And here in Chicago, we've got oak trees, and I'm used to doing the bubble tree when I was a kid, was what I grew up
Exactly.
drawing. And so we've got three very, very different representations of a very similar concept coming together. But when you put three very diverse minds together like that, it allows us to hone things around and say, oh, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? The last thing I would say there is uh, challenge each other, question everything that you see.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you are a creative director, invite your team to challenge you and to question your feedback, so that not in a way that they're saying you're doing it wrong,
Right.
or saying no, I don't want to do that, but in a way that they can come to you and shine light on things you don't see about it. And at the same time, as a designer, as a junior designer even, call something out if you don't understand it. Ask questions. Try to get to the root of why we do what we do, and use that diversity of thought to infuse your work with that. That will allow us to create work that is more unique, that blends our different experiences, and hopefully drives us to a place where the work is creating something new.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I think absolutely our different backgrounds and experiences um, gives us a different lens, which is what's needed to help make the work better. And also the idea about pressure testing everything. It's probably the most uncomfortable thing a creative can do is have someone pressure test their ideas, or a younger creative to question or try to poke holes into um, a veteran's, design or it's uncomfortable, but it's absolutely necessary for us to do that to continue to grow the work.
I will say, I think that as leaders, as creative directors, as ACDs, as design directors, I think we have the responsibility to create that environment. And
Yeah,
especially when we get back to talking about ethics, we set the bar at the top for everybody else that follows. Uh, we are not just leaders, we are representatives of how the industry should function. And we really need to take a stand in saying, this is how we should do things, in
right.
acting the way that we want the industry to work. And that falls on us to start to create that environment where everybody else working around us can feel comfortable with pressure testing the work, with going in and not succumbing to the pressure to just do that quick AI fix, or
Right.
just, oh, it's late at night, I'm going to lean on this because it's easier to do it this way. We have to create the environment where it's okay for our team to fail to a certain degree, or it's
Mm,
okay for our team to not always have the right answer, or for us to not have the right answer, so
right.
that there can be honesty in the work, so that the work can be done on an ethical level. And ultimately, it all creates better work when we create that environment.
Absolutely. And it's super hard to say I don't know sometimes. And just be okay with I don't know, but we can figure this thing out together. But not having all the answers. I believe in the chat, I lost it now, but Michelle was asking something about Canva and how clients um can sometimes actually ask for things being done in Canva, which is completely interesting. With that in mind, and let's transition to there's not really anything new under the sun. That's like an old adage too. We're all pulling from something. We've discussed those things and trying to make what we can original out of that. Um, and you brought up something very interesting earlier. Is originality even the right pursuit anymore? Or should we be chasing something else? Like, is it um, is originality even necessary?
So I believe it is, but that's because I'm always seeking to do things that haven't been done before. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the purpose for what we do is to drive new iterations, to drive to new places with creativity, to try to take audiences to somewhere they haven't been. And that's partly because that's a way to engage with consumers. So I would say that originality is sort of always my end goal in where things get to. But I think that's a wonderful question. I also believe, Don, that we are starting to run towards the end of our time here. So I'm not sure if there was any other last minute stuff that we wanted to discuss before we close out. But I do know that we're starting to hit the time limit, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, David, for that. It really great conversation, and really wonderful that our whole community was here. So this is our session. Um, David from AIGA Chicago, thank you so much. Clap it up for him. Thank you to everyone who participated with our questions and in the chat and feedback. Really enjoyed that. Don't forget that AIGA is a nonprofit membership organization dedicated to supporting designers across many industries and creative communities. By becoming a member, you're investing in your career, the design profession, and an international network of creatives and programs like this. So check us out at aiga.org. We'll be doing this again May 2nd. So check out the AIGA Design LinkedIn page to RSVP for the next one. Again, I'm Dawn Davidson, and see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.